had never felt this kind of loneliness before, at least not in my own home. The space that had once been filled with warmth and laughter now felt hollow, an echo of what it used to be. My husband, Mark, had always been distant in his own way, but over the past few years, it had become something else entirely, like we were living separate lives under the same roof. And now, with him away on a 2-week business trip, I feared that the distance between us would become permanent. I sat at the kitchen table, swirling the tea in my cup absent-mindedly, staring at the empty chair across from me. I had thought marriage was supposed to bring security, comfort, companionship. But somewhere along the way, Mark and I had lost sight of each other. And now, I was left with nothing but silence and the quiet hum of the refrigerator. It was my son, Ethan, who noticed first. "Mom, you okay?" His voice pulled me from my thoughts. I glanced up at him, forcing a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. Just thinking." Ethan was 17, but sometimes he carried himself like someone much older. He had always been intuitive, able to read my moods better than anyone. I suppose that came from all the years we had spent together, just the two of us before Mark entered the picture. "You don't have to pretend," he said, setting his plate on the counter. "I know you miss him." I exhaled a soft laugh, shaking my head. "I miss what we used to have. But I'm not sure I miss him anymore." Ethan's brow furrowed, and he leaned against the counter, watching me carefully. "You guys are gonna be okay, right?" I hesitated. "I don't know," I admitted. "Things just feel different now. Cold." He was quiet for a moment, and then, as if making a decision, he pushed off the counter and smiled. "Well, if Dad's not here to cheer you up, I guess that job falls on me." Chuckled. "Oh. And what exactly do you have planned?" Ethan smirked. "You'll see." That evening, he surprised me with my favorite movie, a cozy blanket, and a bowl of popcorn just the way I liked it. Extra butter, just a little bit burnt. He sat beside me on the couch, nudging me playfully when I sighed too much or got lost in thought. "You're not allowed to be sad tonight," he said, tossing a piece of popcorn at me. "House rules." I laughed, shaking my head as I threw one back at him. "Fine, but only for tonight." The next few days passed in a blur of little gestures. Ethan went out of his way to make sure I wasn't alone too long. He'd sit with me during dinner, tell me stories about school and his friends, make jokes just to see me smile. It wasn't just that he was keeping me company. It was that he was filling the space in my heart that had been left empty for so long. It was a strange thing, realizing how much I had leaned on him, how much I needed him. And maybe, just maybe, he needed me too. I noticed it almost immediately. Ethan had always been a kind, thoughtful boy, but in the past few days, something had shifted. It was in the way he looked at me, not just with concern, but with an intensity that lingered a little too long. It was in the way he stayed close, finding little excuses to be near me, always checking in. He was watching me, studying me, as if he were seeing me in a way he never had before. And maybe I was seeing him differently too. First, I brushed it off. He was just worried about me, that was all. He had always been protective, always hated seeing me upset. But then, he started doing little things that felt different. Like the way he'd place a hand on my back when he passed me in the kitchen. His touch lingering for just a second longer than necessary. Or how he would look at me during dinner. His eyes soft, his smile warm, as if he wanted to say something but wasn't sure how. And then there was the night he made a suggestion that changed everything. We had just finished dinner. Just the two of us, like it had been every night since Mark left. Ethan had taken it upon himself to do the dishes while I dried. It had become our quiet routine, a little piece of normalcy in the strange, silent house. As I wiped my hands on a towel, he turned to me with that familiar playful smirk. "Okay, new rule. Every night from now on, we're gonna play a different game." I blinked. "A game?" "Yeah," he said, leaning against the counter. "Something fun. You've been too serious lately." "I can't have that." Chuckled. "I'm not sure I even remember how to have fun anymore." "Exactly," he said. "Which is why I'm taking control of this situation." I laughed, shaking my head. "All right, boss. What's the first game?" He grinned, his eyes lighting up. "You'll see. Go sit in the living room. I'll set it up." I did as he asked, sinking into the couch with a bemused smile. A few minutes later, he returned with a deck of cards and 2 glasses of soda. "Poker?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Not just any poker," he said. "Strip poker." My jaw dropped, and his eyes widened. Kidding. Kidding, he laughed, holding up his hands. Relax, Mom. Just normal poker. God, your face. I rolled my eyes, throwing a cushion at him. You're impossible. Hey, I got you to smile, didn't I? I shook my head, still grinning as he shuffled the deck. We played for over an hour, laughing and teasing each other over bad hands and lucky wins. I had forgotten how much I loved these moments with him. How easy it was to lose myself in the simple joy of his company. When the game finally ended, Ethan victorious of course, I leaned back against the couch with a contented sigh. That was fun, I admitted. Told you, he said, grinning. Tomorrow we try something else. And so our new tradition began. Each night, Ethan would come up with a new game. Sometimes it was a board game we hadn't played in years. Other nights it was something silly like charades or 20 questions. One evening we built a pillow fort in the living room and played old video games, our laughter filling the space in a way that made me realize just how much I had missed feeling this light. And through it all, that feeling, that awareness, never went away. I could see it in the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. In the way he always found a reason to touch my hand, my shoulder, the small of my back. In the way he watched me like he was memorizing every detail. Something was different. And I wasn't sure what to do about it. The next evening, as I stood by the kitchen counter, my phone rang. Mark. I hesitated before answering. Lately, our conversations had felt more like obligations than genuine moments of connection. And deep down, I already knew how this call would go. Hey, I greeted, keeping my voice light. Hey, Mark replied, his voice distant, as if he were already half somewhere else. How's everything? It's fine, I said, glancing toward the living room where Ethan was flipping through a magazine, pretending not to eavesdrop. How's the weather? He sighed. Cold. Same as always this time of year. There was a pause. Right. And Ethan? He's good. Keeping me entertained. Mark chuckled, but it was forced flat. That's good. Another pause. Well, I just wanted to check in. I'll call again in a few days. All right. Talk soon. Bye. And just like that, the call was over. No warmth, no real interest. Just the necessary words exchanged before moving on. I set my phone down, staring at it for a long moment, a tight knot forming in my chest. I should have felt relieved, maybe even comforted, that he called at all. But all it did was remind me of how empty things had become between us. The silence he left behind felt heavier than his absence itself. I let out a slow breath, trying to shake off the sadness. That bad, huh? I turned to see Ethan watching me from the couch. His expression knowing. It was fine, I said, forcing a smile. Didn't sound fine, he said, standing up and stretching. You sound happier talking to our neighbor Mrs. Peterson, and she spends half the conversation complaining about her arthritis. I laughed despite myself. That's not true. Oh, it is, Ethan teased, leaning against the counter. I mean, honestly, when was the last time you and Dad had a real conversation? One that wasn't just polite. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I didn't have an answer. Ethan sighed, shaking his head. He doesn't make you laugh, Mom. He doesn't make you feel good. I swallowed, my throat tight. Ethan. But I do. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and unspoken for too long. I looked up at him, my breath catching slightly. There was something in his gaze, an openness, a quiet confidence that unsettled me. It was as if he had been waiting for me to notice it, for me to acknowledge what had been growing between us all this time. Before I could respond, he grinned, breaking the tension. Which is why you should listen to my next brilliant idea. I exhaled, shaking my head. Oh boy. Here we go. I'm serious. He placed his hands on my shoulders and turned me toward the basement door. We should clean up the basement and turn it into like a cool little hangout spot. I raised an eyebrow. The basement. The same basement that's basically a storage unit for things we haven't touched in years. Exactly, he said. It's wasted space. We could turn it into something cozy, a movie room, a reading nook, whatever. A place just for us. I hesitated, glancing toward the door. It was true, we never used it. It was cluttered with old furniture, boxes of forgotten things, and holiday decorations that hadn't seen the light of day in years. Ethan's eyes sparkled with excitement. Come on, Mom. It'll be fun. You and me working together, making something cool out of nothing. No Mark. No cold, awkward phone calls. Just us. The way he said it made my heart ache in a way I couldn't quite describe. I smiled softly. All right, let's do it. The next morning, Ethan was already up before me, rummaging through the storage closet for garbage bags and cleaning supplies. Wow, I said, stepping into the kitchen. You're taking this seriously. You have no idea how ready I am for this, he said, stuffing a roll of duct tape into his back pocket. I've been mentally preparing for this for years. I laughed. Oh really? Yep. Every time I go down there I think, wow, this place is a disaster. We should fix it. And now, finally, the day has come. Shaking my head, I grabbed a cup of coffee and followed him downstairs. The basement was just as bad as I remembered. Boxes were piled high, some covered in dust, others stacked so precariously that they looked like they might collapse at any moment. An old couch sat against one wall, its fabric worn from years of use. There was a musty smell in the air, the kind that came from things sitting untouched for too long. Ethan clapped his hands together. All right, here's the plan. We sort everything into 3 piles. Keep, donate, and trash. Decide. This is going to take forever. Nah, he said. We're a great team. We'll knock this out in no time. And to my surprise, he was right. We worked side by side for hours, sifting through old books, forgotten childhood toys, and random trinkets from years past. Every so often, we'd come across something that made us pause. A picture from when Ethan was little, a piece of art he made in elementary school, an old jacket of Mark's that I hadn't seen in ages. With each discovery, we'd stop and reminisce, telling stories, laughing at memories, teasing each other. At one point, Ethan held up a hideous, bright orange sweater. Mom, what is this? I burst out laughing. Oh my God. That was Mark's. I think his mother knitted it for him one Christmas. Ethan wrinkled his nose. That's it. It's cursed. It has to go. You can't just throw it out, I said between giggles. Watch me, he said, tossing it straight into the trash bag. By the time we finished clearing everything out, I was exhausted but strangely happy. The basement felt lighter, like we had erased years of neglect in just a single day. Ethan flopped onto the old couch, stretching his arms behind his head. Okay, now we get to the fun part. I raised an eyebrow. Which is? Making it awesome, he said. Cozy lighting, comfy chairs, blankets. Maybe even a little bar in the corner for snacks. The ultimate hangout spot. I smiled, sitting beside him. I like that. Ethan turned his head to look at me. See, told you this would be fun. I exhaled, resting my head against the back of the couch. You were right. A comfortable silence settled between us. The air was warm, filled with the lingering scent of dust and old memories. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I glanced at Ethan, only to find him already watching me. His expression soft. Mom, he said quietly. Are you happy? I blinked at the unexpected question. I thought about Mark's phone call, about the silence that had followed. I thought about the laughter Ethan had brought back into the house, the way he had pulled me out of my sadness without me even realizing it. And for the first time in a long time I realized my answer was simple. Yeah, I whispered. I think I am. Ethan smiled. And something in his eyes told me that he already knew. After the basement was finally cleared and tidied, Ethan leaned back against the couch, an exhausted but satisfied grin on his face. The place was transformed. What had been an old, neglected space was now cozy and inviting, filled with soft lights, fluffy blankets, and a warmth that hadn't been there before. It felt like a secret retreat, a hidden spot just for us. Ethan glanced at me, his eyes twinkling mischievously. Okay, Mom. I've got another game for us. Oh, really? I laughed, shaking my head. Another one. I think we've played enough games for today. No, he insisted, standing up quickly. This one's special. It's called Wish Fulfillment in a Bottle. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Wish fulfillment. Yep, he said, reaching into a nearby box and pulling out an empty glass bottle. We write down wishes, things we want the other person to do to make us happy, on slips of paper. Then we put them in the bottle and draw one at random. The other person has to grant that wish. I chuckled softly. That sounds dangerous. What if you ask me to do something silly? That's the point, he said, grinning widely. It's about fun. I want you to laugh, Mom. His words touched me deeply. It had been so long since anyone had made an effort just to see me smile. Ethan had made it his mission, and every little gesture was pulling me back to life, piece by piece. "All right," I agreed, reaching for a pen and paper from the nearby table. "Let's play." We each wrote down several wishes, some silly, some simple, some heartfelt. I smiled as I wrote mine, imagining Ethan's laughter at my requests, and wondering what he had in store for me. We folded them up tightly, dropped them into the bottle, and shook it vigorously. "You go first," he urged, handing me the bottle. I reached in, pulled out a slip of paper, and unfolded it carefully. My eyes scanned the words, and a laugh escaped me. "Seriously, Ethan? You want me to sing karaoke right now?" He burst out laughing. "Absolutely. Your rendition of Dancing Queen is legendary." I rolled my eyes but couldn't hold back my grin. "Fine, but only because you asked nicely." And so, right there in our cozy new basement, I belted out the words to ABBA's classic, Ethan doubling over in laughter as I spun dramatically around the room. By the time I finished, I was breathless from giggling, feeling lighter than I had in ages. "Your turn," I said, handing him the bottle. He drew a slip of paper, his eyes widening as he read it aloud. "Do an impression of me when I'm upset about dirty dishes." I nodded, smiling slyly. "Come on, it's only fair." Ethan cleared his throat dramatically, putting his hands on his hips and mimicking my voice with exaggerated annoyance. "Ethan, seriously, how hard is it to rinse a plate? Is it too much to ask?" I laughed so hard I had tears in my eyes. "I do not sound like that." "Oh, you totally do," he teased, grinning widely. "But don't worry, it's cute." I shook my head, my cheeks warm. "You're terrible." "I know," he said, his eyes softening as he watched me. "But it got you laughing. That's all I wanted." My heart warmed at his words, and I reached out, squeezing his hand gently. "Thank you, Ethan. For everything. For today, for making me feel alive again." He smiled tenderly, pulling me into a tight hug. His embrace was warm, strong, comforting, everything I needed. I melted into it, resting my head on his shoulder, feeling a deep sense of peace and belonging that had been missing from my life for far too long. "I just want you to be happy," he whispered, his voice soft against my ear. "I am," I murmured, holding him tighter. "Because of you." We stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other's warmth, the silence between us filled with something unspoken, profound, and beautiful. When we finally pulled apart, his eyes met mine, filled with a kind of affection that went beyond the usual mother-son bond. It was tender, earnest, and unmistakable. The moment lingered, charged with an intimacy that I wasn't quite ready to face. But before either of us could speak, the sound of the front door opening upstairs jolted us from our reverie. We froze, listening as heavy footsteps echoed through the house. My heart sank as I recognized them. Mark. He was home early. My mind raced, confused. He wasn't supposed to be back for another week. "Mom," Ethan whispered, his eyes wide with surprise. "I don't know," I whispered back, my stomach knotting with anxiety. Moments later, Mark appeared at the top of the basement stairs, peering down at us with an expression of mild confusion. "Hey, what are you two doing down here?" "Dad," Ethan said, straightening quickly, trying to hide the sudden awkwardness that hung in the air. "You're back early." "Meetings got cancelled," Mark replied, descending the stairs slowly, his eyes scanning the transformed basement with mild suspicion. "What's all this?" "We cleaned it up," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Made it into a little hangout space." Mark glanced around, eyebrows raised. "I see that." His gaze flickered between Ethan and me, as if sensing something had changed but unsure what. "Looks nice." "Thanks," Ethan said, his voice carefully neutral. "We were just playing a game." Mark murmured, moving closer. "Mind if I join?" My stomach twisted. Mark had never shown interest in this kind of thing before. Games, laughter, or casual moments of connection. His presence felt invasive, out of place in this space that had become so special, so uniquely ours. "Of course," I said, plastering a smile on my face. "We were just finishing, actually." "Oh," Mark said, clearly disappointed. He shifted awkwardly, sensing the tension. "Well, maybe next time." "Maybe," I echoed quietly. The easy warmth of the afternoon had vanished, replaced by a strained, uncomfortable silence. Mark stood there, a reminder of the reality we'd both managed to forget. Ethan cleared his throat, glancing at me with a reassuring smile. Yeah, maybe next time. His words held more meaning than Mark could understand. They were a promise, a reassurance that no matter how cold things became with Mark around, Ethan was there, ready to bring warmth and laughter back into my life whenever I needed it. Mark glanced at us one last time before turning and heading back upstairs, leaving Ethan and me alone again. I exhaled deeply, my shoulders slumping. Hey, Ethan said softly, stepping closer. It's okay. I looked up at him, the sadness creeping back in. Is it? He reached out, cupping my cheek gently. I promise, Mom. We'll be okay. His touch was warm, reassuring, and in that moment I believed him. Even if things with Mark were cold and uncertain, Ethan's presence, his care, his laughter, his unwavering support, made it all bearable. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.